Queen Camilla in trouble as Prince William and King Charles found some shocking documents in her possession exposing the evil she's planning to do to Kate Middleton as she might take over her royal title as queen. Welcome viewers to my channel. Please subscribe, like my video and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next update. The morning the documents were discovered began like any other in Buckingham Palace, yet the air seemed charged with an unusual tension, as if the ancient walls themselves sensed the impending upheaval. King Charles had arrived early in his private study, seeking the quiet moments before the day's engagements began. The sun had barely risen, casting pale light across the intricate carpets and gilded furnishings, illuminating a room that had witnessed centuries of royal decisions, secrets, and ambitions. It was here, amid the weight of history and the whispers of generations past, that the shocking discovery would unfold. Prince William, who had come to discuss upcoming engagements with his father, noticed immediately the unusual stack of papers on Charles's mahogany desk. Normally, documents were sorted neatly by aides and secretaries, their contents pre-screened and organized to prevent any breach of security or unintended shock. But these papers were different. The envelopes, thick and embossed with the royal insignia, had a formality that suggested secrecy beyond even the normal bounds of palace correspondence. Their presence on the desk, unaccompanied by any aid or explanation, immediately set William on edge. Charles's expression was guarded, but his eyes betrayed a mixture of disbelief and unease. He gestured toward the documents, his hand trembling ever so slightly, and William understood instantly, this was serious. The kind of serious that demanded careful attention, patience, and perhaps even courage the likes of which he had never needed before. As they began to examine the contents, the initial shock gave way to a creeping dread. The documents were detailed, precise, and deliberate in their language. They outlined strategies that appeared calculated to undermine Kate Middleton's influence within the royal household, each plan designed to subtly elevate Camilla's position while diminishing the perceived authority and presence of the future queen. Every sentence seemed to echo with intent, every paragraph carefully structured to suggest foresight, planning, and unwavering determination. William's mind raced as he processed what he was reading. At first, he wanted to believe there had been some mistake, a misinterpretation, or perhaps an exaggeration. After all, Camilla had long been portrayed in public life as dignified, supportive, and devoted to her family. She had navigated the complex world of royalty with an elegance that commanded respect. But as he read on, the possibility of innocence grew thinner, replaced by a dawning understanding of something far more troubling. The documents detailed not just general ambitions but specific actions. There were mentions of public appearances carefully timed to overshadow Kate's initiatives, suggestions for subtly influencing charitable foundations to shift focus away from the Duchess, and even proposals for private engagements designed to weaken support for Kate among senior members of the royal household. Each plan was meticulously written, leaving little room for ambiguity. It was clear that whoever had authored these papers possessed both intimate knowledge of palace operations and a willingness to exploit that knowledge for personal gain. Charles, for his part, maintained a calm exterior, though the tension in his shoulders and the tight line of his mouth revealed his inner turmoil. He had seen the complexities of court life for decades, had witnessed rivalries and alliances form and dissolve within the walls of the palace. Yet even he was taken aback by the audacity and scope of what lay before him. This was not mere ambition, this was a deliberate, strategic effort to alter the balance of power within the family. William felt a wave of anger mixed with protective instinct for Kate. She had always approached her role with grace and integrity, never seeking to manipulate or dominate, yet here was a plan designed to undermine her at every turn. He could almost hear the whispers of the palace corridors, the subtle undercurrents of gossip and influence that Camilla had long mastered. The thought that his wife could be targeted in such a calculated way filled him with a mixture of fear and resolve. As they delved deeper into the documents, patterns emerged. The strategies were not haphazard, they were layered, designed to act both overtly and covertly. Public engagements were mentioned alongside behind-the-scenes maneuvers, creating a dual approach that could simultaneously build Camilla's prominence while eroding Kate's influence. There were recommendations for cultivating certain relationships, advice on controlling narratives within the media, and even suggestions for leveraging private conversations to sway key figures in the palace. Every detail reflected a mind focused on long-term gain, a mind that had spent years observing, calculating, and planning. The emotional weight of the discovery began to press down on both father and son. Charles felt the sting of betrayal not only as a husband but as a father. To realize that someone so close, so trusted, could harbor such intentions was a blow that shook him to the core. William, meanwhile, felt a protective fire ignite within him. The future he had envisioned with Kate, one built on partnership, mutual respect, and love, suddenly seemed threatened by forces that were both personal and insidious. Questions raced through William's mind. How long had these plans been in motion? How much of what had appeared to be cordial family interactions had been orchestrated as part of a larger strategy? Could Camilla's influence already be affecting decisions within the palace without their knowledge? The documents suggested a depth of planning that was almost surgical in precision, leaving William to wonder how many moves had already been made before the discovery. Charles, ever the strategist, began to consider options. Immediate confrontation could risk escalation, drawing unwanted attention from both the press and the wider public. Silence, on the other hand, might allow further manipulation to unfold unchecked. The delicate balance of power, trust, and loyalty within the family now hung by a thread, and any misstep could have far-reaching consequences. They needed a plan, a way to address the threat without causing irreparable damage to the family or the monarchy. As the hours passed, the gravity of the situation became increasingly clear. The documents were not just a personal betrayal, they were a strategic challenge, a test of wisdom, judgment, and emotional resilience. Charles and William both understood that the decisions made in the coming days could shape the future of the monarchy itself. Every action, every conversation, and every choice would carry weight far beyond the palace walls. Even as they contemplated their next steps, there was a silent understanding between father and son. The documents were only the beginning. They had uncovered a blueprint, a glimpse into intentions that might have remained hidden if not for this fortunate, or fateful, discovery. The palace, with all its tradition, ceremony, and public perception, now faced a crisis that was deeply personal, intimate, and fraught with danger. In the midst of the study's heavy silence, a single thought persisted: what would Camilla do if confronted? The documents suggested intelligence, patience, and strategic thinking, but human nature is unpredictable, and even the most carefully laid plans can unravel. Would she attempt to justify her actions, deny any wrongdoing, or escalate her efforts? The uncertainty was almost unbearable, adding a psychological weight to the already overwhelming emotional stakes. For William, the most immediate concern remained Kate. He pictured her poised and graceful at her engagements, her charitable work ongoing, her public image impeccable. The idea that someone could be plotting to destabilize her position, to undermine her influence, was intolerable. Protecting her became the paramount objective, and he knew that this would require both careful planning and unwavering vigilance. Charles, with the wisdom accumulated over decades of navigating royal life, began mapping out potential strategies. How to safeguard the family, how to assess the truth of the documents, and how to confront the challenge without triggering unnecessary conflict, all these considerations weighed heavily on him. The palace had always been a theater of power, influence, and subtle maneuvering, but rarely had the stakes felt so immediate, so personal, and so high. As the sun climbed higher, casting golden light across the palace gardens, the private study remained a place of tense deliberation. Father and son, bound by blood and duty, faced a challenge that tested not only their judgment but their capacity for trust, resilience, and strategic foresight. The documents lay between them like a silent sentinel, a reminder of ambitions that threatened to reshape the family's future. By midday, the initial shock had begun to give way to a grim determination. Charles and William knew that in order to navigate the storm ahead, they would need to act with clarity, caution, and resolve. The discovery of the documents had set in motion a series of events that could not be ignored, and every decision from this point forward would carry consequences both immediate and long-lasting. The first step, they realized, was understanding the full extent of Camilla's intentions. The documents provided a roadmap, but human behavior is rarely linear, and assumptions could be dangerous. Every detail needed to be analyzed, every plan scrutinized, and every potential outcome considered. The palace, steeped in history and tradition, now became a battleground of intellect, strategy, and emotion. And so, the stage was set. The discovery had revealed not only ambition but also vulnerability, the vulnerability of the family, the institution, and the individuals whose lives were entwined within its walls. What had begun as an ordinary morning had transformed into a moment of reckoning, a confrontation with hidden truths that demanded courage, wisdom, and the steadfast protection of those most at risk. For William and Charles, there was no turning back. The path ahead was uncertain, fraught with emotional turbulence, and shadowed by the possibility of betrayal. Yet, even in the face of such challenges, a sense of resolve began to take hold. The documents had exposed a threat, but they had also ignited a determination to protect, to act decisively, and to ensure that the family's legacy remained intact. As the day drew on, the weight of the discovery lingered like a shadow across the palace. Every hallway, every chamber, and every whispered conversation would now be colored by the knowledge that ambition, secrecy, and strategy were at play within the heart of the family. The documents were more than paper, they were a revelation, a challenge, and a warning, and they would shape the course of the royal family in ways that no one could yet fully comprehend. And in the quiet moments that followed, as father and son contemplated the enormity of what had been uncovered, a shared understanding emerged: the battle was only beginning. The documents had been discovered, the intentions exposed, but the true test of loyalty, strategy, and resilience was yet to come. The public perception of Queen Camilla had always been a carefully curated tapestry, woven over decades with meticulous attention to detail, media strategy, and personal conduct. To the casual observer, she was a figure of grace and stability, a woman who had weathered scandal, scrutiny, and social tension with dignity. She appeared loyal, supportive, and composed, someone who complemented King Charles's reign while maintaining her own measured presence. Yet, as with any figure of prominence in a world defined by power, privilege, and scrutiny, appearances were only part of the story. Behind the polished image lay a complexity rarely revealed to the public, a mixture of ambition, intelligence, and the kind of strategic thinking that could influence the course of the monarchy itself. Camilla's early years in the public eye were often overshadowed by controversy. Her relationship with Charles had been scrutinized from the start, a narrative fueled by media speculation, public opinion, and comparisons to the beloved Princess Diana. For many, she was cast in the role of the interloper, the woman who disrupted what seemed to be a fairy tale of love and idealized family life. Yet Camilla endured, steadily carving out a role for herself that balanced respect for the institution with her own ambitions. She cultivated public appearances, engaged in charitable work, and gradually shifted perception from scandal to competence. The transition was not instantaneous. For years, she faced relentless media criticism, personal attacks, and social ostracization. But Camilla's resilience became evident as she navigated each challenge with a mix of poise and calculated strategy. Every public appearance, every speech, every carefully chosen engagement was an opportunity to reinforce her image as a devoted consort and a capable figure within the monarchy. She understood the optics of royal life better than many, using public perception as both shield and tool, gradually transforming skepticism into reluctant acceptance. Despite the careful cultivation of her public persona, whispers of intrigue and ambition never fully disappeared. Observers noted her keen awareness of influence, her ability to forge alliances, and her subtle ways of asserting presence in situations that might have been dominated by others. To many, these were natural traits, reflective of someone accustomed to navigating complex social hierarchies. To others, however, they hinted at the potential for more calculated maneuvers, strategies designed not merely for appearance but for tangible influence over decisions, narratives, and outcomes. King Charles's decision to marry Camilla was met with cautious optimism by some and outright skepticism by others. Within palace walls, insiders recognized her intelligence, her ability to manage public perception, and her understanding of the delicate balance between tradition and modern expectations. Yet there was always an undercurrent of tension, an awareness that Camilla's ambitions might not always align perfectly with those of other family members or with the broader narrative of the monarchy. It was this tension that made the discovery of the documents so alarming. The very traits that had allowed Camilla to navigate decades of public scrutiny, her intelligence, strategic thinking, and careful observation, now appeared to be turned inward, toward the family itself. The same skills that had helped her secure acceptance, legitimacy, and influence could, if misapplied, create fractures within the family, destabilize carefully constructed roles, and place personal ambition above unity and trust. Publicly, Camilla's image remained impeccable. She attended high-profile events with elegance, engaged in charitable work with sincerity, and maintained the dignified demeanor expected of a royal consort. Her interactions with Kate Middleton, at least on the surface, were courteous and measured, each gesture and word seemingly aligned with the conventions of royal decorum. Yet the documents suggested that beneath the public veneer, there might be a different reality, a series of calculated moves designed to assert dominance, subtly shift influence, and secure advantages that went beyond mere optics. The duality of Camilla's image was emblematic of the broader dynamics of royalty itself. Publicly, the monarchy demanded composure, unity, and an unwavering commitment to duty. Privately, the institution has always been a stage of negotiation, strategy, and occasionally, silent rivalry. Camilla's ability to navigate these dual realms, the public eye and the private corridors of power, was exceptional, but it also made her a figure of both admiration and suspicion. Those who understood her fully recognized the potential for both loyalty and ambition to coexist in ways that could redefine relationships and influence outcomes. The media had played a significant role in shaping and reshaping Camilla's public persona. From tabloid criticism to carefully managed appearances, her narrative was a battleground of perception. Early portrayals focused on scandal and controversy, emphasizing her relationship with Charles as a source of tension and public debate. Over time, however, the narrative shifted. Strategic engagement with journalists, carefully orchestrated public appearances, and her philanthropic work allowed her to gradually reconstruct her image as a compassionate, competent, and capable consort. This reconstruction was deliberate, informed by an understanding of media dynamics, audience psychology, and the importance of narrative control. Yet, as with any public figure, perception does not always equate to reality. While Camilla's image conveyed stability and loyalty, the discovery of the documents revealed a side of her not typically visible to the public eye. Intelligence, ambition, and strategic foresight, traits often admired in leaders, now carried a more ambiguous, even threatening, dimension. The contrast between public perception and private reality created a tension that could have profound implications for the family, the monarchy, and the future of Kate Middleton's role within the royal hierarchy. Royal insiders had long observed Camilla's ability to influence decisions subtly, often without overt action. Her reputation for careful counsel, diplomatic acumen, and perceptive analysis made her a respected figure within certain circles. Yet the documents suggested that these abilities might be leveraged in ways that were personally advantageous, potentially at the expense of others. The very qualities that had ensured her survival and success in the public sphere, her patience, strategic intelligence, and acute awareness of social dynamics, now hinted at the capacity for manipulation, intrigue, and carefully orchestrated advantage. This tension between public image and private intention was central to understanding the unfolding drama. On one hand, Camilla had achieved a remarkable transformation in the eyes of the public, moving from scandalized outsider to respected queen consort. On the other hand, the documents suggested that personal ambition and strategic planning could intersect with family dynamics in ways that were both intimate and high stakes. The discovery forced Charles and William to reconcile these two dimensions, to understand not only who Camilla appeared to be, but who she might be in moments removed from public scrutiny. The broader context of the monarchy amplified the stakes. Royal life is inherently performative, defined by ritual, ceremony, and public expectation. Every appearance, statement, and action carries layers of meaning, influence, and consequence. Within this environment, perception can become reality, and the alignment, or misalignment, of intention and image can define careers, reputations, and legacies. Camilla's mastery of public perception had always been an asset, but the documents revealed that the same mastery could be wielded as a tool for personal advancement, potentially at the expense of familial harmony and institutional stability. Understanding Camilla's public image also required an appreciation of her resilience. She had endured intense scrutiny, personal attacks, and social marginalization, yet she emerged not only intact but strengthened. Her capacity to navigate these pressures, to adapt and endure, demonstrated a form of intelligence and strategic foresight that few could rival. These traits, however, while laudable, also carried the potential for calculated application in pursuit of personal goals that might intersect with the ambitions, duties, and expectations of other family members, particularly Kate Middleton. The contrast between Camilla and Kate further complicated the narrative. Kate's public image is built on approachability, empathy, and relatability, qualities that endear her to the public and reinforce her role as future queen consort. Camilla's image, in contrast, conveys resilience, strategic intelligence, and composure, qualities that inspire respect but sometimes distance. The intersection of these two images, one rooted in warmth and accessibility, the other in calculation and experience, creates a dynamic in which influence, perception, and ambition can collide. The documents suggested that Camilla was not merely content with her position but actively considering ways to assert dominance within this dynamic, subtly altering the balance of power between herself and Kate. For Charles and William, understanding Camilla's public image was now part of the challenge. It was not enough to acknowledge the documents, they had to contextualize them within a broader understanding of her personality, history, and public persona. Recognizing the duality of Camilla's presence, publicly supportive, privately ambitious, was critical in formulating a response that would protect the family, safeguard Kate, and preserve the integrity of the monarchy. As the day unfolded, both father and son reflected on how perception and reality intertwine within the palace. Camilla's public image had been carefully curated over decades, a combination of personal conduct, media management, and strategic social positioning. Yet the documents revealed that even the most polished image can conceal intentions that are deeply personal, ambitious, and potentially disruptive. The challenge now was to navigate this complex landscape, to discern which moves were strategic, which were protective, and which might cross the line into betrayal. The story of Camilla's public image, therefore, is one of contrasts and complexity. She is at once a figure of resilience and elegance, a survivor of public scrutiny, and a strategist capable of influencing outcomes with subtlety and precision. At the same time, the documents suggest that this very strategic intelligence can be deployed in ways that are personally advantageous, potentially to the detriment of others within the family. The discovery forced Charles and William to reconcile admiration with caution, respect with skepticism, and public persona with private intention. In the shadow of the palace, the stakes could not have been higher. Camilla's public image, meticulously cultivated over decades, now intersected with private ambitions revealed through the documents. The balance of power, perception, and influence was delicate, and every move, every decision, would carry ramifications not only for the individuals involved but for the monarchy itself. The revelation forced both men to consider the deeper implications of appearances. In a world where every gesture is scrutinized and every word analyzed, understanding the duality of public image and private intent becomes not merely a matter of perception but one of survival, strategy, and emotional intelligence. For Charles and William, this meant preparing for the possibility that Camilla's carefully managed public presence might mask ambitions that could directly affect the family's future, particularly Kate's role and influence within the royal hierarchy. The documents had exposed a potential plan, but they also revealed a truth about Camilla that had always existed. She was a woman of intelligence, foresight, and strategic acumen, capable of shaping outcomes through careful observation, timing, and subtle influence. The challenge now was to ensure that these qualities, while admirable, did not disrupt the family, the monarchy, or the future that William and Kate were building together. By evening, the gravity of the situation had settled fully. The palace, with all its history, ceremony, and grandeur, had become a crucible of tension, strategy, and anticipation. Camilla's public image remained intact in the eyes of the world, yet the private understanding of her ambitions introduced a layer of complexity that demanded attention, caution, and careful planning. Charles and William knew that the coming days would test their judgment, loyalty, and emotional resilience in ways they had never imagined. The discovery of the documents had revealed a new facet of Camilla's character, one that juxtaposed the public figure against private intentions. Understanding this duality was essential for navigating the intricate dynamics of the family and the institution they served. In the interplay between image and reality, perception and ambition, they found themselves facing questions that were as personal as they were consequential. How could they protect Kate, preserve family unity, and maintain the monarchy's stability, all while respecting the complexities of a woman whose intelligence and ambition could shape the course of events in ways previously unimagined? The answers were not yet clear, but one thing was certain: Camilla's public image, meticulously cultivated over decades, would no longer be viewed in isolation. It was inseparable from the ambitions revealed in the documents, and it would now serve as both a guide and a warning as the family prepared to confront a reality that blurred the line between public persona and private intention. Kate Middleton had long been admired for her poise, intelligence, and ability to navigate the often treacherous waters of royal life with a combination of grace and authenticity. From the earliest days of her courtship with Prince William, she had been a figure of both public fascination and private scrutiny. Her every move was analyzed, her every choice dissected, yet she maintained a steady composure that endeared her to the public and solidified her role as the future queen consort. Yet, as the documents discovered in Buckingham Palace suggested, Kate's rise was not without its challenges, challenges that now carried a more insidious dimension. Her ascension within the royal family had been marked by a careful blend of tradition and modernity. She embraced the ceremonial aspects of her role, understanding the importance of protocol, symbolism, and public expectation, while also introducing a sense of relatability that resonated with ordinary citizens. This balance, between duty and approachability, tradition and innovation, was a rare skill, and one that had not gone unnoticed within the inner circles of the palace. Kate's influence had grown steadily over the years. Her charitable initiatives, public appearances, and subtle yet consistent advocacy on issues such as mental health, children's welfare, and education positioned her as a figure of moral authority and public trust. To the world, she was a paragon of modern royalty, intelligent, empathetic, and fully capable of carrying the weight of her future role as queen. But within the palace, her rising influence may have been perceived differently. Those attuned to the subtleties of court life could see her growth as both opportunity and, potentially, competition. The documents suggested that Camilla viewed Kate not merely as a family member to be supported, but as a rival whose prominence might overshadow her own ambitions. While Kate's rise was organic, fueled by public admiration and genuine commitment, Camilla's path had been more calculated, reliant on strategic positioning, alliances, and careful management of perception. In this context, Kate's increasing influence could be seen as a threat to the delicate hierarchy that Camilla had spent years solidifying. What made Kate particularly significant, and, perhaps, threatening in the eyes of some, was her embodiment of both tradition and modernity. She honored the ceremonial duties expected of a royal consort while also cultivating a public image that was accessible and relatable. This duality made her immensely popular with the public, and by extension, increased her political and cultural capital within the royal institution. For Camilla, who had navigated her own path through criticism and skepticism, this could represent both admiration and unease. The documents hinted at strategies designed to subtly shift influence, ensuring that Kate's rise did not diminish Camilla's perceived authority or prominence. William's protective instincts toward his wife were immediate and intense. He had long recognized Kate's strengths, the quiet confidence she brought to her role, her unwavering dedication to family and duty, and her ability to engage the public in ways that enhanced the monarchy's image. The idea that anyone, particularly someone as close as Camilla, might deliberately undermine her was almost unbearable. Yet, the evidence was undeniable. The documents outlined a pattern of strategic planning, engagement manipulation, and influence seeking that suggested a level of intent beyond mere coincidence. The subtlety of the threat was part of what made it so dangerous. It was not overt hostility or direct confrontation. It was nuanced, calculated, and almost surgical in its precision. Recommendations for adjusting public appearances, influencing charitable initiatives, and shaping internal narratives were designed to act gradually, shaping perception and opinion over time. In essence, the documents described a plan to chip away at Kate's influence while amplifying Camilla's own prominence, an approach that could be nearly invisible to outsiders but devastating in its impact if executed effectively. Kate's position within the family, while strong, was also inherently delicate. As the future queen consort, she was expected to navigate her role with diplomacy, tact, and restraint. Publicly asserting herself or challenging Camilla directly could be perceived as inappropriate, while inaction risked allowing influence to shift subtly in ways that could undermine her position. This duality, between maintaining propriety and protecting her influence, created a complex dynamic, one that required careful observation, strategic thinking, and support from those closest to her, particularly William. The documents further suggested that Camilla had anticipated Kate's rise long before it became a reality. They outlined scenarios in which Kate's increasing visibility could threaten Camilla's standing, paired with strategic recommendations designed to preemptively mitigate this risk. The level of foresight, planning, and calculation revealed in the papers was remarkable, highlighting a deep understanding of palace dynamics, media influence, and public perception. It was clear that this was not an impulsive plan, but a carefully orchestrated approach designed to shape outcomes over months, if not years. For William, The implications were both personal and institutional. Protecting Kate was not simply a matter of marital loyalty, it was a matter of preserving the integrity of the monarchy and ensuring that the future queen could fulfill her role without undue interference or manipulation. The stakes were immense. Any disruption to Kate's position, any erosion of her influence, could have cascading effects on public perception, internal family dynamics, and the stability of the institution itself. The documents also revealed a pattern of indirect strategies, designed to avoid direct confrontation while subtly shifting influence. This included manipulating narratives within the palace, influencing key staff members, and strategically timing public appearances. Each recommendation was carefully crafted to create the perception of neutrality or benevolence, while simultaneously advancing Camilla's interests and limiting Kate's visibility. The subtlety of these tactics made them particularly insidious, as they could easily go unnoticed by those not attuned to the nuances of court life. Kate's response to such potential threats, though not detailed in the documents, would require both strategic acumen and emotional intelligence. Maintaining composure, building alliances, and carefully managing public perception would be essential in countering any attempts to undermine her influence. The situation highlighted the complexity of modern royal life, where personal relationships, public image, and institutional responsibilities intersect in ways that